Y'all heard about Pac's infamous Thug Life tattoo across his stomach, right? But did you know that ink wasn't just for show? Trial? That was a whole rap supergroup that got caught up in so much drama, legal mess, and industry foolishness that they barely got off the ground before everything went left. And the mess behind it all? Baby, let me tell you. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel where we spill all the tea your thirsty ears been waiting for. Today we diving deep into the real deal behind Thug Life. And I ain't just talking about that iconic tattoo stretched across Tupac's abs that had everybody and their mama trying to recreate it. Nah, I'm talking about the actual group that had the game shook for a minute before everything fell apart. Look, when Pac said Thug Life stood for the hate you give little infants F everybody,
the core of it is about looking out for the poor, the disenfranchised, and the kids. If you don't look out for the kids, they could turn out to be a monster.
He wasn't just being deep for the hell of it. That man was laying down a whole philosophy while the industry was trying to paint him as just another gangsta rapper. The audacity. But the mess that went down with this group? Whew, child. Grab your drinks because we about to get into all of it. Before I start airing all the laundry, and trust, it's dirty, let me break down who was actually in this collective that barely anybody talk about nowadays. You had Tupac, obviously. The star, the visionary, the man who couldn't stay out of trouble to save his life. Then Big Syke, this big teddy bear looking dude who was loyal to Pac till the end.
I had morals, but what Pac gave me was to run no matter what, run for what you really want.
Macadocious was in there too, keeping it so low-key that half y'all probably thinking Maca who right now. Then we got Mopreme Shakur. Yes, Shakur, cause that was Pac's stepbrother. And finally, the Rated R, who was not in fact Rated R, but probably should have been with all the drama he was caught up in. The way this group came together is a whole story by itself. Mopreme was blood. Well, step-blood, so that was an easy call. Big Syke met Pac while running with Spice One, and they clicked like that. The way I heard it, they stayed up all night the first time they met, just spitting verses and passing blunts till the sun came up. That's that real hip-hop connection right there. Macadocious was a Bay Area homie from way back. One of them dudes who knew Pac before the fame really hit. He'd met him through Coolio though. And the Rated R? He got brought in cause he was nice with the rhymes. But word is, Pac was also trying to help him stay off the streets after R got shot. Twice. Once in a drive-by that wasn't even meant for him. Talk about wrong place, wrong time. Fun fact. Did y'all know Biggie would have been a part of Thug Life? Say what? Now let me put y'all onto some industry tea that'll have you clutching your pearls. Thug Life wasn't just about the music. It was Pac's big middle finger to Interscope. See, the label was trying to control his image, telling him what he could and couldn't say. So what did Pac do? Created a whole new group where he could say whatever the hell he wanted. Strategic? Yes. Petty? Absolutely. And I live for it. But chilly. That plan backfired so hard it left skid marks. When they recorded Thug Life Volume 1, the execs at Interscope nearly collapsed when they heard those tracks. I'm talking clutching invisible pearls, reaching for heart medication, the works. Time Warner, who owned Interscope back then, was already catching heat from them politicians like C. Dolores Tucker, who was on her crusade against rap music. When they heard what Thug Life was cooking up, baby, they told Interscope either drop these troublemakers or we got problems. The way I heard it from someone who was in the building that day, Pac stormed into Jimmy Iovine's office like a hurricane, flipped a whole coffee table, had assistants diving for cover. Security came running in thinking somebody was getting murdered in there. Pac was screaming about his First Amendment rights while them suits was hiding behind their desks talking about but the shareholders. Let's talk about that album, Thug Life Volume 1, which should have been their magnum opus, but ended up being butchered like a Thanksgiving turkey. The original version of that album was supposedly so raw it would have made NWA sound like a gospel group. Interscope demanded they cut almost half the tracks, and the ones that stayed had to be watered down like happy hour drinks. One track in particular, A Star Ain't Ballin', had the label's legal team shook. Word is, the original version called out specific Oakland police officers by name. The lawyers were running around the office like their hair was on fire. He can't do that. We'll get sued. Meanwhile, Pac was like, watch me.
And
There was this massive blowup where Pac threatened to leak the original tracks to radio DJs himself if they tried to censor him. Can you imagine the chaos? The label finally compromised, but what we got was basically Thug Life Light trademark. Out of the original 14 tracks, only 10 made it to the album, and even those got the PG-13 treatment. Now let's get into the real messy stuff, the personal drama these dudes were dealing with while trying to launch this group. Everybody knows Pac was fighting cases left and right.
They're making it so big now. Even the charges and what they're saying, it's bigger than who I am now.
By the time the album dropped in '94, he was already knee-deep in legal quicksand over a shooting in Atlanta.
He plays not guilty all charges.
But what about the rest of the crew? Big Syke was struggling with some serious health demons that nobody talked about. Even back then, his weight was causing diabetes issues, but he kept it quiet. Man would be popping pills between verses, checking his blood sugar in the studio bathroom, then come out like everything was fine. Pride is a hell of a thing. Those health problems eventually took him out in 2016, which is just heartbreaking because he was one of the real ones. Now Mopreme, being Pac's brother wasn't all it was cracked up to be. He had 2 baby mamas blowing up his pager 24/7, causing all kinds of chaos. There'd be times in the middle of recording when his pager would go off. He'd hit the payphone outside and come back looking like he wanted to punch a wall. One time he got so heated after a call that he spit a verse so angry they couldn't even use it on the album. Too real. Macadocious was fighting for custody of his kid the whole time they were recording. Man would be in court in the morning and in the booth by afternoon. Some of his lyrics had these slick little references to his baby mama drama that flew over everyone's head. Lines about judicial corruption and systematic separation weren't just social commentary. Dude was literally rapping about his court battles. And the rated R? Baby, this man had PTSD before people were even really talking about mental health like that. He'd been shot twice before joining Thug Life. Sometimes during sessions, certain sounds would trigger him. A car backfiring outside, somebody dropping something heavy, and he'd just freeze up or have to leave the room. The other guys covered for him, saying he was stepping out for a smoke or something. But real talk, he was outside trying to get his breathing under control. Let me spill some scalding hot tea about the Death Row connection. Suge Knight was watching Thug Life like a hawk from day one, and he was not happy about it. Even though Pac wasn't signed to Death Row yet, Suge had been circling him like a shark smelling blood in the water. He saw Thug Life as competition for Pac's attention, and baby, Suge Knight was not a man who liked to compete. The way Mopreme tells it, Suge and his goons would just show up to their recording sessions unannounced. Imagine you in the middle of laying down verses, and suddenly the door opens and in walks Suge with like 15 muscle-bound dudes with death row chains, not saying a word, just watching. Tell me that wouldn't mess up your creative flow. One time, Suge supposedly pulled Pac aside for a private conversation that lasted 2 hours, while the rest of Thug Life just sat there twiddling their thumbs. When Pac came back, he was quiet for the rest of the night. Nobody asked what was said. Some questions you just know better than to ask. This created all kinds of tension within the group. Big Syke apparently confronted Pac about it, saying something like, "You forming this group or auditioning for another one?" They didn't speak for almost a week after that, which is a long time when you're trying to finish an album. They patched things up just days before a scheduled performance, but the damage was done. When Pac got locked up in February 1995, everything went sideways for Thug Life.
Tupac Shakur has been sentenced to a maximum of 4.5 years in prison for abusing a fan.
What y'all don't know is that the other members actually tried to keep the momentum going. They recorded like 7 or 8 tracks without him, thinking they could release something to hold fans over until he got out. But Interscope shut that down with the quickness, wouldn't even listen to the tracks. The label basically shelved the whole group like some old canned goods in the back of your grandma's pantry. Pac was writing letters from Clinton Correctional like crazy. Some of these letters have come out over the years, and they are wild. At first, he was all positive, talking about plans for the next album, who he wanted to produce it, features he wanted to line up. Man was planning a whole comeback from his cell, but as time went on, them letters got darker. He started seeing conspiracies everywhere.
Seems to believe that the guards in the prison are targeting him because of his fame.
Writing about how Jimmy Iovine and Ted Field were working with the government to silence him, how certain artists were being paid to steal his style. In one letter to Mopreme, he apparently wrote, "Don't trust nobody wearing a suit. Not one of them. They're all connected." Paranoid? Maybe, but in the music industry, just because you're paranoid don't mean they ain't out to get you. When Suge Knight swooped in like a vulture and posted that $1.8 million bail in October '95, everybody knew there'd be strings attached.
They can't take the man from the money, take the money.
But nobody expected Pac to just completely abandon Thug Life for Death Row. That was a betrayal with a capital B. The rest of Thug Life found out about Pac signing with Death Row the same way everybody else did, on the news. Can you imagine? Finding out your group is basically done because you saw it on MTV? Cold-blooded, Big Syke eventually followed Pac to Death Row and joined the Outlaws. But that was after weeks of silent treatment. Mopreme, Macadocious, and the Rated R were just left hanging. No calls, no explanations, no nothing. The messiest part, there was supposed to be a meeting the very week Pac got shot in Vegas. Mopreme had finally convinced everyone to sit down and hash things out, maybe even restart Thug Life with a clean slate. But we all know what happened instead.
Near fatal shooting, but he couldn't survive a second. Rap star Tupac Shakur died last night after a brief life in a rough business.
September 7th, 1996, the night that changed hip-hop forever. After Pac passed, the remaining members of Thug Life were like ships without a compass. Mopreme tried to keep his career going under the name Comedy, but it never really popped off. He'd be the first to admit he didn't have his brother's star power. Big Syke stuck with Death Row for a minute, but that ship was already sinking after Pac died. Suge went to prison. He put out some independent stuff later on, but it was a struggle. Macadocious and the Rated R basically vanished from the scene faster than a new Jordan release. The Rated R gave this heartbreaking interview in 2007 where he admitted he fell into a deep depression after everything went down. Said he didn't even listen to music for almost 2 years after Pac died. It was too painful. Big Syke's story ended in December 2016 when they found him dead in his home in Hawthorne. Official cause was heart failure, but everyone who knew him said his heart had been failing long before that. Figuratively speaking, when he died, his net worth was estimated at only about $200,000. Let that sink in. A man who was part of one of the most iconic figures in hip-hop history died with less money than a mid-level accountant. Mopreme is still around, keeping his brother's legacy alive through interviews and documentaries.
I knew that we were going to be legends. Pac knew he was going to be a legend. We knew we were on a legendary track back then.
His net worth is reportedly around $150,000. As for Macadocious and the Rated R, they're ghosts now. Nobody really knows what they're up to or what they're worth. They pop up occasionally at Pac tribute events, but otherwise, they stay out of the spotlight. Now let me put y'all onto something juicy. There's a whole vault of unreleased Thug Life material that's just collecting dust somewhere. We talking nearly 30 tracks that nobody outside the inner circle has ever heard. According to Mopreme, who's the most vocal about this stuff, some of these tracks feature collabs with West Coast legends like Snoop and Spice One. There's even supposedly a track with a teenage Kendrick Lamar before he blew up. Can you imagine how fire that must be? But here's the gag. All this music is trapped in legal limbo. POC's estate, Interscope, and the surviving members been fighting over who owns what for years. Every few years, rumors circulate that they're finally gonna release this stuff, but then nothing happens. In 2019, for the 25th anniversary of the album, they were supposedly putting together a special edition with some of the unreleased tracks. Fans were hyped.
Oh my God!
But then, as usual in this story, legal mess shut it all down. Some people who've allegedly heard these tracks say they're being deliberately suppressed because the content is still too controversial, even by today's standards. Imagine lyrics so raw they're still considered too much for public consumption in 2025. That's the legacy of Thug Life, still causing problems from beyond the grave. Thug Life might have been here for a good time, not a long time, but their impact on the culture is undeniable. They stood up against censorship when everybody else was bending the knee. They put their whole careers on the line to speak truth to power. That tattoo across Pac's stomach outlived the group itself, becoming a symbol recognized worldwide. But for the real ones who know the story, those 5 letters represent 5 men who tried to change the game from the inside out. As Mopreme said in his last interview about the group, we wasn't just making music, we was making history. We just didn't know our chapter would be so short. And ain't that the truth? So there you have it, fam. The untold, unfiltered, unapologetic story of thug life. A cautionary tale about how the industry will chew you up and spit you out if you don't play by their rules. Before I let y'all go, drop a comment below if you want more hip-hop tea like this. Tell me which group's dirty laundry you want me to air out next. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button like it owes you money, peace, and blessings.